The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media is strictly prohibited.
Welcome back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today we will be answering listener emails, and we have a question from Thomas, who lives in Richmond, Virginia. Thomas asks, outlets, even the Fox propaganda network, are reporting that there is trouble in Trump paradise. It seems Elon Musk isn't happy about the tariffs and is arguing with Peter Navarro, Trump's economic advisor. Do you think Musk can influence Trump to stop this stupid economic policy? And it looks like because the tariffs have been deferred 90 days, but I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that was a Musk manipulation or coercion, or do you think that was what do you think that was? And it's very interesting because if these tariffs are supposed to be bringing in all this money, then pausing them would be the last thing that Trump would want to do. So what the tariffs exactly are for, it becomes I mean, obviously they're not going to be benefiting the Americans, or the stock market wouldn't be going down. And the whole thing is, as you said in an earlier podcast, completely insane.
Yeah, well, I think insane is the right word. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely above my pay grade to try to evaluate Donald Trump's mental state and why he does what he does. No, I don't think it has anything to do with Elon Musk. I think that Trump has been trying to calculate when investors will price in his tariffs. And if you remember, when we discussed this last week, Kevin Hassett, on the Sunday morning before the Wednesday that he did the announcement, was asked, and he's his top economic advisor, the chair of the White House Economic Council, was asked on TV, what are you expecting from these announcements, this announcement on Wednesday? And he said he had no idea. And if he doesn't have an idea, who would have an idea? And it turns out after the fact that nobody knew what Trump was going to announce on Wednesday, because Trump held it close to the vest. And if the small circle of people that he trusts around him in the White House were the ones who came up with these wild numbers in this bizarre calculation that he made based on the trade deficit minus the amount of imports that we get from a country divided by 4. And that was where he came up with what their tariffs were on us, which were wildly exaggerated, if not just like astronomically off the charts wrong. And that it shocked even the most unshockable traders and investors and business people out there, because they just never saw such huge tariffs coming. And of course, now that the Chinese this morning decided to fight back, the EU announced that they were going after Republican states specifically in their retaliation. All of that has caused Trump to lose. Basically, he lost again this round. He overestimated what people were willing to put up with, and he got his face smacked. Basically, he got punched in the face by investors and people around him, and he had to back off. But he'll be back. In 90 days, he'll try it again. And maybe this time investors will be a little bit more inured to it and not react so strongly to it. And so the tariffs will remain on that time. But one of these days, if he keeps coming back, I suppose he's going to have to stick with it. But today he's declared that he lost, and he's holding up tariffs for another 90 days.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think Elon Musk had anything to do with it. I don't think anybody has anything to do with any of this other than Trump himself. It's just on a whim, and he's trying to gauge the whole thing. And I always said he is very good at making fantasy appear to be reality to the people that are so enamored with him, the cult members. And this is probably just another opportunity for him, unfortunately, to basically say, hey, what a great guy I am. And people are going to believe it. And they're not going to go to the in-depth analysis that Scott just had. They're not going to, think of it in the terms of, dollars and cents and right and wrong and whether they're factoring it in or not. They're not going to, the cult members don't do that. They're just going to say, yeah, yes, he did a great job, even when he didn't do anything. I think he's getting the pressure. I really do. Now, here's the problem with somebody like Trump. He cannot admit he's wrong. So I agree with Scott in the sense that this is going to come back. 90 days, we're going to be seeing this again because this guy simply cannot admit this is the wrong direction. He's still going to say tariff, the most beautiful word in the English language. He's still going to do all that simply because he's such a narcissist. He simply cannot face the fact that he made a mistake. And some of the greatest presidents we've ever had in the history of the United States were able to stand in front of the American people and say, I screwed up. Let me fix it. And that's the important part. Let me fix it. Trump will not admit the mistake. Therefore, there's nothing to fix. So, yeah, I agree with Scott that, yeah, in 90 days, it'll be back. I don't think Elon Musk had anything to do with it. Other than Doge, and we'll see how that all plays out. I think Musk is, and I got thinking about that too when I was reading this question. I think one of the only reasons that Elon Musk is really doing anything with Doge is it gives Trump somebody to blame. He can say, "Oh, hey, it wasn't me. It was that South African guy. Maybe ICE can deport him. I don't know." It gave him a fall guy. That's why the person that's actually supposed to be running the agency really isn't running the agency, and I don't think I think that Elon Musk will come out of good. He can only be there for so long because he's a special government employee, so he's got to be out. I just can't see that the influence is going to be that great because there's two of the hugest egos. Neither one of them can admit that they're wrong.
Yeah. There's always a bad failing, obviously, but again, let's just go back to where we were a couple of hours ago. Trump claims that China charges us 67% in tariffs. The truth is that it's 3%. He charged that the EU charges us 39% in tariffs. It's actually 2.7%. That Vietnam, 90%. Okay, Vietnam's a little bit higher at 5%, 5.1%. Japan's tariffs against U.S. goods is 46%. It's actually 1.9%, even less than ours, which averages out at 2.2%. So there's no reality here, right? I mean, it's just fantasy or unreality or made up or whatever it is, and it's very in keeping with Trump's MO of just making up stuff and hoping that people go along with it. And if you find yourself nodding along with him, wake up, because he's crazy and he just says crazy stuff. Sometimes he uses like billions and then he goes trillions and then he goes back to hundreds of billions, and it's almost like the first letter doesn't matter. Whether it's a B or an M or a TR, who really cares? It's something. It's a big, that's it. Like Trump's MO is just is utter insanity, sloppy thinking. No. But let's talk about Peter Navarro for a second, because I've seen Peter Navarro on TV a couple of times now in this latest, he's already gone to jail for Trump. So he's proved his loyalty, and that's the biggest thing. And let's face it, Peter Navarro is probably the force behind Trump's insane tariffs, right? Stephen Miller probably is over there doing the whole, let's round him up and get him out of here part of the administration, but Peter Navarro is the driver behind the tariffs. Peter Navarro is such a crazy bastard. He's supposedly an economist with a PhD, but he used to make up a fake name, Ron Vara, which is an anagram for his last name, and use Ron Vara to endorse his crackpot theories. Ron Vara was supposedly a wise and brilliant economist who did the peer reviews of Navarro's academic work. And he just made the guy up. And other economists who are taking Peter Navarro's academic work and quoting it would say, would also quote Ron Vara, thinking he was a real thing. And we're completely embarrassed and shocked to find out that Navarro made this up. And Navarro, when he was confronted with it, just kind of chuckled and said, I mean, if this wasn't obvious to anybody that this was just a made up name, this is like the one that George Costanza uses all the time, Art Vandelay, that, bad on them, like buyer beware. So Peter Navarro is probably clinically insane, and he's the one driving behind Trump on all of this stuff. And we're the three of us are academics. We've gone through peer reviews. We've done peer reviews. This is just stuff you don't do in this business.
Yeah. This gets you like banned for like life. I mean, you've just taken your PhD and just might as well just go flush it. It's now worth absolutely nothing. Peter Navarro. And again, it's the same idea of pretty much everybody in Trump world. They're made up. They're a fantasy. They, look behind the curtain. They are not who and what they say they are. I mean, Gorka, what was it? Dr. Gorka or whatever the heck his name was that was always on there. Come on. I mean, these guys have no credibility and would have no credibility in the real world. But they've hitched their wagon to a populist, which has elevated them on the coattails, because it's the only way they can get there. They couldn't get there on their own merit. And it brings me back to the one that John McCain, who I always had great respect for John McCain, I really did. Elizabeth O'Baghy, who was this expert, PhD expert in Palestinian affairs or something like that in the Middle East. Turns out she only had a bachelor's degree. She never graduated from either of the two graduate schools that she said she was, and she actually worked for a Palestinian interest group. I mean, oops. And here's the funny thing about her. She was on the Brookings Institute. Nobody at the Brookings Institute checked this stuff out? I can assure you, the Phoenix Research Group checks out everybody's credentials before they say, yeah, we want you. I mean, there's no, we're just not taking your word for it. This is, and again, I've said this repeatedly. Trump is so good at making fantasy appear to be reality. It is what people want to hear. And I really do. I think that's, as Scott was pointing out, I think that's why the tariffs are being put on hold, because he isn't hearing what he wants to hear. He's going to run it again. He's got the definition, Einstein's definition of insanity. He's going to keep running that same old play in hopes of a different result. And who knows? But I don't think anybody, Navarro probably, as Scott says, does have some influence over this tariff idea. Probably he does. Maybe it's Turd Ferguson. Who knows? You remember Turd Ferguson?
Sure.
Maybe it's him.
Yeah.
That's right.
But
I don't know.
It's the fakeness, So like Rand Paul claimed to be a board certified ophthalmologist, but as it turns out that he created a board with himself as the president of the board and then certified himself as an ophthalmologist. Trump himself, back in his tabloid days as a New York realtor, used to call up Page 6 from the New York Post and try to disguise his voice and tell them, hey, this is John Barron. I'm the publicist. I work for Donald Trump. I just want you to know that Donald Trump was out last night with this beautiful starlet or something like that. And the guy who he was talking to on the phone would go, Donald? Is that you? And he's like, no, this is John Barron. This is not Donald Trump. I work for Mr. Trump. And, he's really quite, doing really well with the ladies right now. I thought you'd be interested. And the guy's like, Donald, I'm going to hang up now. You can't do this. But Trump really used to do that. And he had several names, but John Barron was the one he used most often. And again, it's this like Art Vandelay thing that they have going on there. Ron Vara. And as you point out, Trump is the driving force behind this. He's been talking about it for 40 years now. And he was wrong then and he's wrong now. But he found the one guy in the world, Peter Navarro, who actually probably does have a PhD. I haven't even bothered to look that up, whether he actually has a PhD in economics. Because the other guy who sucks up to him all the time is Stephen Moore, who he had actually tried to nominate as a Supreme Court judge, and it got shot down immediately. I'm sorry, not a Supreme Court, as the Fed chairman. But it got shot down immediately when it was pointed out that he didn't even have a BA in economy as an economist, and he was no PhD and didn't even have a master's degree in it. So Stephen Moore is a guy who's gone out there and made up this career for himself. And he was on TV this morning saying that Donald Trump deserves to get nominated to get a Nobel Peace Prize for bringing world trade back to something along the lines of evenness. And, he surrounds himself with these people who just endorse every stupid thing that he wants to do. But yeah, Donald Trump is the driving force behind the tariffs and the only person that we need to blame for all this stuff.
He will bring it back in 90 days, as you said, and we'll be going back over the same thing again. I'm afraid to say, and this is not going to endear anybody to the United States, and they're all going to turn their backs on us, as they should, and continue creating their own trading partners and developing their own marketplaces. And Trump was saying everybody was calling and they wanted to make a deal, and oh sir, and they were he actually used the words, they were kissing his ass, and the South Koreans were flying in and the Japanese were flying in, and everybody was so eager to fly in.
He actually used the word kissing his ass.
Yes.
They did.
And the only problem was that he couldn't see everybody quickly because there were so many people. And I'm wondering, okay, well, who are the 50 countries? And those were the only two that were mentioned. And I knew about Netanyahu's the main three, but China was definitely resisting. There's no way that President Xi would demean himself.
No.
In front, absolutely not.
No.
Canada's not going to. The European Union isn't going to. So I don't know who the 50 countries are. Russia, of course, never had any tariff, and that's one of our upcoming questions for next time.
Maybe it's penguins.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe the penguins are coming to kiss his big ass.
And seabirds.
Okay. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Anyway, I do hope that we answered the question. Thank you again to all our listeners, and do please keep your emails coming, and we will do our best to answer your questions as we go off on tangents and meander elsewhere as we answer. But stay with us on the Nova Society, and we'll see you again next time.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Science. The JCIS is an open journal for upcoming scholars. The JCIS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis. JCIS is a publication of Nova Works, a scholarly repository at Nova Southeastern University. A link to the journal is in our description.